Hello, it's the 19th of April 2019, and I'm Greg Smith. And this is a genealogy chart of the Smith-Pittman family, going back to just before 1800. That's Revolutionary War period. George Washington. The chart shows you 7 generations. They're color coded. This is the first generation, the blue. The orange is the second generation. Third is the red. Green is the fourth. Yellow is the fifth. Purple is the sixth. And I guess that cyan is the seventh generation. And I've got some pictures around here. This is the wall of our living room at Gonaway. And to give you an example of how this works, let me trace, for example, Joseph Lee Nelson, Joey Nelson, down here, who was born in April of 2001 in Aurora, Illinois. And let's go up here to the top and pick a guy. Clark Puffer. Clark Puffer was born on the 23rd of November in 1799 in Townsend, Vermont. Now, Clark grew up and he met Lydia Dennis, who was from Windham, Vermont, not too far. And they decided to get married, and they were married in Vermont in 1823. And they had 5 children, Mary, James, Henry, Martha, and the 5th one was Richard Puffer, born in February of 1824 in Townsend, Vermont. So they're all still up there in Townsend. But Richard started moving, apparently, because he met Margaret Ann Bolton, who was the daughter of the Boltons up here, and she was born in Tennessee. They were married in Missouri in 1860. And they had 6 kids. 5 boys, 3 girls, including one of the daughters, Laura May, who had 14 children. And the 5th one was George W. Puffer, George Washington Puffer. Now, George Washington Puffer was born in Labette, Kansas, so they're moving around. And he meets Carrie Dell Randall, who was the daughter of the Randalls and the Joiners. And they get married in Oklahoma in 1905. She was from Mississippi. So they're in Oklahoma, and they have 5 kids. One of them is Johnny Bell Puffer, right there. And she meets Arthur Lee Pittman, who was born in Lawton, Oklahoma. Now, Arthur Lee Pittman is in this picture. He's right here. And they get married in Oklahoma in 1936. And then they have a bunch of kids, one of whom is Frances K. Pittman, born in 1947 in Lawton. She meets me, Gregory Timothy Smith, born in 1943 from Oak Park, Illinois, when I was down there in the Army. We get married in Oklahoma in 1966, and then there are 6 children: Caroline, Joanne, Jennifer, Kelly, Gregory, and Sandra. So Joanne, the second one, meets James Arthur Nelson, and they get married in Illinois in 1995, and they have 3 kids, and one of them is Joseph Lee Nelson. And so that's how you get from Clark Puffer in Revolutionary War times all the way down to Joey Nelson today. And you can do that with any of these people up here. In this chart, every box contains, as best I can get it, the birth name, first, middle, and last name, date of birth, and date of death, if applicable, and the town and the state where they were born. Every box where there is a direct descendant relationship down to my children and grandchildren is a box with sharp corners, right angle corners. The ones with rounded corners are people that are either nephews, nieces, maybe some cousins in there, people who married into the family, but there's no direct relationship, descendant-wise, of anybody that's in a box that's got rounded corners. For example, if you come down here to my parents, and you go to my sister Colleen, she's in a rounded box. So you can't get over to here from there. You got to go over to me. So that's how all the lines work. Now let me point out a few people in here. Alfred Smith is in this picture over here with his family. Now that picture was taken in 1883. He's got his wife, Mary Ann Barrett. There she is right there. Right there. Here's Alfred. Now, Alfred also had his mother living there, Sarah Smith. And by the way, this is where the Smith surname came for anybody down here who's got Smith. There are other Smiths up here, but this guy here, Thomas Smith, born in 1806, is where the Smith name in our family came from, because he and his wife Sarah had Alfred. Alfred married Mary Ann. They had children. One of them was Jess Smith. He married Mary Beatrice Feely. They had a son, William John Smith, who married Mary Timothy Barlow, and then they had a bunch of kids, which were all named Smith, including me. And that's how this Smith gets down to here. Now, Alfred immigrated to the U.S. He was born in Wolverhampton, England. And that picture was taken in Sheffield. And in 1887, they immigrated. However, somewhere along the line, and I haven't been able to trace it yet, Mary Ann Barrett, who is basically 34 years old there, looks pretty healthy, died 2 years later. Also, the oldest son, Fred, died about 2 years later. And his mother, Sarah Smith, was living with them, and she died. Now, Sarah Smith is an interesting case. If you look at this picture, when I first saw it, I doubted whether it was authentic, because my aunt, Irene, wrote on there, probably taken in 1821. And so I thought, well, this could have been some picture taken from some historical portfolio. So I did an extensive search on the internet for this particular photo, and there is no website that contains it. So I believe that this is my great-great-grandmother. And it couldn't be 1821. I'm guessing it's more like 1850s, because the first photograph ever taken of any human being wasn't until 1838. Now, she looks fairly well off. She's got a nice dress on. I cropped this thing so you can't see the table, but there's a nice table. The drapes are nice. She's sitting there with her hair all fixed up. She's got a book in her hand. And she apparently was able to put her son Alfred through college because he had an engineering degree. He eventually came over and became a coal miner in the U.S., but he had an engineering degree, as I understand it, with a sheepskin, a real sheepskin and everything else. So a couple of other things I wanted to point out here. My grandmother, Mary Beatrice Feely, who for a long time I wondered how in the world was she ever in Oklahoma, because that's where my father was born. Well, she was born in Oklahoma, and she spent the first 24 years of her life in Oklahoma. And the only way they got around was on the trains. Down there was a big influx of immigrants from Ireland and Italy. They're all Catholic. So the Catholic Church has sprung up. All those Catholic churches now are not functioning. They're closed down. The phones don't even ring there anymore. But back then, she spent the first 24 years of her life there. And she got married in Oklahoma City to Jess Smith in 1906. I had a little difficulty finding that. So this is not totally up to date with all the information that I now have, but it takes a big effort to print this thing. So maybe in another year I'll have much more information and I'll put that on there, because you can see there are some blank places in here. William Feely, her father, was born in Pennsylvania, but I can't trace anything more. He came from Ireland, as did his mother. And his wife, Anna Scully, parents were also born in Ireland. The Smiths over here and the Barretts were all born in England. So my father, when he told me I was half Irish and half English, was pretty much the case. Half English, half Irish. And even on my mother's side, the Barlows are English and the Hourhands are Irish. I can't get into all this stuff. Robert Elwood Barlow is an interesting case. And I'll treat this more in some of the descriptions, the textual descriptions in the blog site I have for the Smith family, which is where I'm going to put this video, hopefully. But I just wanted to give everybody an impression of what's on here. All the Pittmans, when Kay's mother, Johnny Bell, who is right there, married Arthur Lee Pittman, his grandparents were Arthur Franklin Pittman, who was this gentleman right here, and Anna Marie Pori, who is this lady right here. And these are the rest of Kay's uncles and aunts. And here's her brothers and sisters. Most of the brothers and sisters at this level, at this generation, in the Pittman side, did not have any kids. They got married, and only one of them had any kids. So that's the genealogy chart. 7 generations, going 220 years. And some of the people in it. And I think that some of the descriptions are so interesting as I go into each individual persons on here. You can read about them in the blog. So as I said, the way people got around down here in Oklahoma, in this coal town, and it was a boom town at the time. It's virtually a ghost town now. But Lehigh, I believe my grandmother was born in a mining camp in Lehigh, and it grew so fast that it eventually had 3 fairly fancy hotels, including an opera house. And there's nothing left of it now. It's basically, there might be 300 people living there scattered around. So I'll leave you with the idea of how she got out of Oklahoma. She spent the first 24 years of her life there. Her husband just went up to Bay City, Michigan, and called her up there. And that's where her 3rd child, Irene, was born. So if you can picture Mary Beatrice Feely, and by the way, she went by Mamie, as a lot of Marys were, because it apparently was a shortcut for kids trying to say Mary when they were growing up. She was known as Mamie basically all of her life, so that's all I've ever heard anybody call her. If you can picture her, I'm going to leave you with this little song, because the railroad that serviced that area was the only way they got around. Here's my grandmother at age 3 at a photography studio in Dallas, Texas. She got married up in Oklahoma City. And how did they get around? They rode a railroad called the MKT Railroad. It was the Missouri, Kansas, Texas Railroad. And it spread all over the place. And it became legendary in prose, poems, songs, everything. It was originally the MKT, but the stock symbol was KT, and so people started calling it the Katy. So if you wanted to go anyplace, you caught the Katy. So if you could, close your eyes for a second and picture Lehigh, Oklahoma, mining town, in 1910. And Mary Beatrice Mamie Feely Smith, with her 2 babies, standing on the train platform, waiting to catch the Katy.
She caught the Katy, left me a mule to ride. She caught the Katy, left me a mule to ride. My baby caught the Katy, left me a mule to ride. The train pulled out.